My skis slipped, and in less than a second, the world turned into a nightmare of ice and rushing water. I was trapped under 8 inches of solid ice. The question wasn't just if I would survive, but what would be left of me if I did. Welcome to Learn English with my story. Today, you'll hear a real story told from the perspective of the person who lived it, and along the way, we'll learn some natural English together. My name is Anna Bogenholm. Back in May of 1999, I was a 29-year-old surgical resident, finishing my training in Narvik, Norway. It was a beautiful place, especially for someone like me who loved skiing. On May 20th, a day I will never forget, I went skiing with 2 of my colleagues, Marie and Torvind. We were all good friends and experienced skiers. We were skiing off-piste, which means we were skiing in areas without prepared ski runs. By the way, off-piste means away from the main, marked ski trails in wilder snow. For example, experienced skiers often enjoy the challenge of skiing off-piste. Anyway, we had been skiing for a while and were heading down a familiar gully, a narrow valley, that we'd skied down many times before. I was leading the way. The snow was perfect, and the air was crisp and cold. It was a day that felt full of life and energy. I had no idea that everything was about to change in an instant. I was skiing down a section near a frozen stream. I remember turning to navigate around a small rock, and then my world just fell apart. My skis lost their grip, and I slipped backward. Before I could even shout, I plunged through the ice into the freezing water below. The current was incredibly strong, and it pulled me under the ice head first. My friends saw me disappear. They rushed to the hole in the ice, but they could only see my skis and feet sticking out. My head and torso were trapped under an 8-inch thick layer of ice. The water was so cold it felt like 1,000 needles stabbing my skin. I found an air pocket, a small space between the water and the ice, which allowed me to breathe. But I was stuck. I couldn't move. I was desperately trying to free myself, but the weight of my clothes and the force of the water were too much. I was fighting for my life, but I was also aware that my body was getting colder and colder. I could feel my strength leaving me. My friends were trying to pull me out, but they couldn't get a good grip, and the ice was too thick to break. They were shouting to me, trying to keep me conscious. They told me to hold on. The phrasal verb hold on means to wait or to keep your grip on something. For example, hold on, I'll be there in a minute. So, I tried to hold on, but after about 40 minutes in that icy water, I couldn't fight anymore. A strange calm came over me. I wasn't in pain. I just felt my body shutting down. I remember everything becoming very quiet and peaceful. And then, nothing. I stopped breathing and my heart stopped beating. I was, for all intents and purposes, dead. My friends, Marie and Torvind, didn't give up on me. When they realized they couldn't pull me out, they called for help. The phrasal verb give up on, someone means to stop hoping or believing that they will succeed or get better. For example, even when he failed, his family never gave up on him. They knew time was running out. A rescue team was dispatched by helicopter. It took them a while to arrive, and even longer to cut me out of the ice with a chainsaw. By the time they finally pulled my body from the river, I had been submerged for 80 minutes. My body temperature was 13.7 degrees Celsius, or 56.7 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the lowest body temperature anyone has ever survived. I don't remember any of this. Of course. My first memory after the fall is waking up, much later, in a hospital bed. I was connected to so many machines, and there was a tube in my throat to help me breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was completely paralyzed from the neck down. That was the most terrifying part. To be awake, to have your mind working, but to be trapped inside a body that doesn't respond. The doctors at the Tromsø University Hospital had worked against all odds to save me. The expression, "against all odds," means that something happens even though it seemed very unlikely or impossible. For example, against all odds, the small team won the championship. The head of the emergency department, a doctor named Mads Gilbert, made a very bold decision. Even though I had no heartbeat and wasn't breathing, he believed that my brain might have survived because the extreme cold had slowed down my metabolism, protecting my cells from damage. He said, "Nobody is dead until they are warm and dead." They used a heart-lung bypass machine to gradually re-warm my blood outside of my body and then pump it back in. It was a slow and delicate process that took over 9 hours. And then, miraculously, my heart started beating on its own again. My survival was considered a medical breakthrough. The word breakthrough refers to an important discovery or development that helps solve a problem. For example, scientists have made a major breakthrough in cancer research, but surviving was only the beginning. The next stage was a long and arduous journey of recovery. For weeks, I lay in the hospital bed, unable to move anything below my neck. The doctors weren't sure if I would ever walk again. The nerves in my body were severely damaged. It was a period of immense frustration and despair. I had to rely on others for everything. To rely on someone means to need or depend on them. For example, young children rely on their parents for food and care. Slowly, very slowly, things started to change. I began to get some feeling back in my fingers and toes. Physical therapists worked with me every single day. The exercises were exhausting and often painful, but I was determined. I had to relearn how to do everything, from holding a fork to taking my first step. It was like being a child again. Each small bit of progress felt like a huge victory. The day I could wiggle my toes, we celebrated. The day I could sit up in bed by myself was a major milestone. I had moments of doubt, of course. I worried about my future and whether I could ever go back to my old life, to my career as a doctor. Eventually, after months of intensive rehabilitation, I was able to walk again with the help of canes at first. My fine motor skills in my hands were the last to come back, and to this day, I still have some minor nerve issues, but I made a recovery that nobody thought was possible. Less than 2 years after the accident, I went back to work at the same hospital that saved my life as a radiologist. Looking back, the experience changed my perspective on everything. I learned to appreciate the small things in life, the things we so often take for granted. When you take something for granted, it means you don't realize how valuable it is until you lose it. For example, He took his health for granted until he got very sick. My story is a testament to the power of the human body, the importance of quick-thinking friends, and the incredible advances in modern medicine. My friends who stayed with me and called for help, and the medical team who refused to give up, are the real heroes. I owe them my life. The fact that I am here, telling this story, is nothing short of a miracle. I was given a second chance at life, and I try to live it to the fullest every single day. My story shows us that even in the darkest moments, when everything seems lost, there can still be hope. It's a powerful reminder of how fragile life is, but also how resilient we can be. If you enjoy hearing real stories like this and want to improve your English at the same time, follow our channel. We share fascinating cases and true events every week to help you master the language. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.